concatenate with the number. So what happens is the three as it is it renders, and the other one, like if you see 4 and 5, is not able to like sum, because three string plus number, it will result 34. That will automatically become a string, then string plus again a number, then again it will automatically just concatenate, so we get a result of 345. But if you see the below one, we have 3 plus 4 plus 5, but here, as you can see, these two are already number, so yeah, it automatically converts to 7, and then 7 concatenates with 5. So this is what called example, okay, and where we defined a war of foo, okay. Now here in the above code, in the first example, and let's say we have another example also, so I can just demonstrate two things at a time. So okay, so we have example 1 running and example 2, okay. Now in the above code, if you see, the what declares the variable, which you see, the what declares the variables, and the inner foo overrides the counter outer one foo, okay. So this one which you see, right, it automatically, so when I use bar here and this one, so if you'll see, it automatically get replaced, and once this is get replaced, it automatically replaces the outer one which we had foo, okay. But now let's see the example of let, how the let works here. So we have defined a let here, okay, and then again we use the let here. Now since this is in scope, now once we do a console log for this, as you can see, it will only return bars here, okay. But if you do out of the scope, it will still return bar. So as you can see, the the let which you see, right, it only it's quite useful when you don't want to change the value, and whenever its value like it's scoped, then only the value will change for only that particular scope which you have. We're going to talk about is called the frequent operation log. So if you see in this example, so this is not a recommended way of writing. The problem here is, in the first example, it requires the DOM and searches for this element, the highlighted one, whenever something is clicked, which actually impacts the performance, because it requires the DOM and then only it updates the inner text of that element. So the best will be to use it in a constant, just like this, the element which we are going to play with. So whenever the button now is clicked, so we will, instead of requiring it, we define it a constant, that where it is, and then only we will change the inner text, okay. So the next thing which we're going to talk about is called using global variables. So whenever you try to define a global variables like something like this with something called var, global var, and you define a bar here, the problem is this can be changed anytime. So what we do, and also, like, let's say it can also have a naming conflicts, okay. So whenever, let's say, you want to reuse this, or not reuse it, actually you have defined something new and you want to assign a value, so value of this will be also changed. So what to do, instead of this, let's provide a modular fashion for this. So the second code which you see here, it uses iffy, which basically means immediately invoked function expression, to create a module in which variables are only visible inside the module and will not affect the other code. So we all know that even if you don't remove the semicolon, it will still work. But the problem is, whenever the code is minified or merged, that time it leads to some error. So to avoid that, using a standard semicolon is standardized. The next thing is comparing nan. So nan is, as it said, that not a number. Okay. However, since nan it's not equals to any value, it is necessary to use a function to judge when it's comparing to none. So the first example which you see, that is a common mistake which we all do. But while the second example uses is nan to make a judgment of why with a bool, or whether it's nan or not. So as you know that using a eval is actually without a, it's evil only, because the problem here is that it causes security issues and performance issue. Therefore it's best to avoid eval at most as possible. But there's a recommended way to do this. So just like is how you are providing the function in a string, you will provide that. But now here what we do is we use something called function, which actually create a new function and then executes the code itself. So using this can be a game changer. So lastly, which we are going to talk about is the common mistake is forget to bind this when passing function as parameter. So in the box case which you see, right, if you try to run this, it will not run when you try to call the object property of grade. Okay, but now let's say see the another example is, let's say we call the property of grade, which is actually a function, and then what we try to do is we bind the object itself. So what this does is it automatically prints the property of alias, so it binds it. So this is actually required when you try to have when you try to pass function as a parameter.